changes, we'll keep you up to date. News Talk KVNU 102 FM 610 AM. Also on the new KVNU mobile app.
KVNU News Time is 5:03. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Logan City officials have scheduled the ribbon cutting for the long-awaited Center Block Plaza in downtown Logan for 11 o'clock Saturday morning, September 23rd. Logan Mayor Holly Danes said she was delighted to announce that the new plaza will be named the Carol and Jim Lobb Plaza in honor of their very generous lead gift for the project. The opening of the plaza will signal achievement of another milestone in Danes' ambitious plans for the revitalization of downtown Logan. That initiative began with improvements to Center Street to create a theater-restaurant district, followed by the Downtown Plaza project and the nearly completed construction of a new city library. The site of the Downtown Plaza at 55 North Main is directly across from the Logan Tabernacle. 5 buildings of varying ages and historic integrity once occupied that site. The old Emporium building and adjacent structures to the north were demolished in January 2022 to make way for the Plaza project. The ribbon cutting for the Plaza next Saturday, a week from this coming Saturday, will precede the Giant Pumpkin Festival on Center Street that same day. KVNU News Time is 5:04. KVNU weather for tonight. Mostly clear skies is the forecast, and the overnight low tonight down into the mid-40s, and then mostly sunny around 80 on Friday, sunny and lower 80s on Saturday. It's been to 77. It's 76 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by the Duct Hunter. It's that season soon upon us. The Duct Hunter reminds you, change your furnace filter every 3 months. Your furnace will run more efficiently. To clean your ducts, call the Duct Hunter at 435-770-4813.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology cares about you and your hearing. Dr. Paul Danes has always called Cache Valley home and cares about its people. And Dr. Danes offers state-of-the-art equipment, allowing him to provide the best service and care possible when it comes to your hearing. So if your hearing isn't what it used to be, give Dr. Danes a call at 753-HEAR or visit CacheValleyHearing.com to see what they can do for you.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. Utah Agricultural Land Trust, a Cache Valley-based organization that helps ag landowners protect their land for continued agriculture use, will hold its first annual fundraiser this coming Saturday night, September 16th, from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Gibbons Greengate Farm in Smithfield. It is located at 4680 North, 800 West. Darren Perry, former chairman of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation, will speak during the evening on the need to protect open spaces in Utah. Perry talked about the importance of doing that.
You know, as an indigenous person, the environment, protecting our resources is really important to me and has been throughout my whole life. Even when I ran for Congress, I ran, talking about public lands and making sure that we conserve what land we have. And so when a group like this calls and asks to come speak, it's quite an honor to do so.
He feels a connection to this area as Native Americans stewarded this land for thousands of years and called it a name which translates to Willow Valley in English. He said he can imagine the valley being covered with lots of willows and green grass in those days.
I've lived in Cache Valley probably for 7 years now. And one of the things that concerns me just a little bit is the great amount of development.
Yeah.
And so I'm not anti-development, but I certainly think we can do it smarter. And we certainly have to start preserving some of these great open spaces, especially the agricultural land that is going to play a part in our food sovereignty here down the road.
In addition to Perry's remarks, the evening will include live country music performed by father-daughter duo David Anderson and Jenny Lynn. Also, cowboy poetry compliments of Thatch Elmer. Tickets are $75, a portion of which is tax deductible and can be purchased at utahaglandtrust.org. Donations from the event will support operations of Utah Agricultural Land Trust. And this from Cache County that they're asking motorists to be advised the Cache County Public Works Department will be closing Mendon Road, 600 South, for road construction beginning on Sunday, September 17th through Friday, the 22nd. The closure will be in effect daily from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. to all through traffic from 3200 West to 2000 West. Access to residents and businesses will be maintained. County crews will be upgrading a damaged culvert at approximately 2300 West on Sunday and Monday and will be paving the road from 3200 West to 2000 West Tuesday through Friday. Those with questions on how this closure might affect them can feel free to reach out to the Cache County Road Division at 435-755-1560. KVNU News Time is 5:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Get ready for the ultimate home improvement event of the season. The Logan Fall Home Show is back. Mark your calendars, September 15th and 16th at the Cache County Event Center. Discover unbeatable deals on all your home improvement projects and meet local remodeling experts under one roof. Admission is free, so bring your friends and family. Doors open Friday from noon to 8 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. until 6. Visit LoganHomeshow.com for more details.
When a friend or loved one is hurt, you want to help them. If your loved one was injured because of someone else's negligent or careless driving, help them by telling them to call the Advocates, now with offices in Cache Valley. We don't charge for the consultation or any meeting after, and you will pay nothing out of pocket while we fight for the settlement your loved one deserves. We only get paid if you do. Call the Advocates today at 801-355-5550 or chat online at utahadvocates.com. Your loved ones deserve an advocate.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I'm excited about our next guest because this is a rare opportunity here in Cache Valley to hear from someone who is an expert on what is really a seldomly discussed, outside of academic circles at least, but yet very important topic. And the topic broadly is U.S. foreign policy and our strategy when it comes to events that might pop up, unexpectedly, like most recently the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, but also our overall strategy of where we are in the world, what we're doing in the world, and some of the effects of that. Longtime listeners may remember we spoke with a USU professor who is an expert in guerrilla warfare several months ago on the show, and he told us one thing we do know about our strategy is that we don't really know what the ROI is, if it's working or if something else might work better. And that was kind of troubling to hear. So that fits perfectly into an event taking place tonight, September 14th, this evening at 6:30 p.m., sponsored by Utah Citizens for the Constitution and the Cache County Conservatives Club. They have invited a man named David Pyne in to speak. David received an MA in National Security Studies from Georgetown University and a JD from Southwestern University of Law. He's a former Combat Arms and Headquarters staff officer and is a national security strategist, serves as deputy director of the EMP Task Force. I've linked to all of this on our Facebook page if you'd like to learn more about that task force. And David agreed to join us here today to talk a little bit about what he'll be discussing tonight. And David, you sent me some things in advance. It's fascinating, to say the least. Is it fair to say that what you're getting at here is a better understanding of foreign policy to expose some of the things you think are going way wrong? Is that a fair characterization of your, sort of where you're coming from?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I mean, most people would view my opinions as somewhat contrarian and unconventional, but in fact, I believe they accurately reflect the foreign policy views of the founding fathers. I mean, I would think I'm even more interventionist than they were, of course, because they presided over a small republic that needed to be taken care of and had little military power. I'm supportive of us continuing to have what I call our empire, but not as expansive and much less confrontational with our nuclear superpower adversaries in order to avoid what I see as a potential nuclear World War III in our near future.
What's fascinating about some of the things you've sent me in advance, I love this. You begin everything, and I assume this is what you'll do again tonight at the event at the Cache County Courthouse. And again, for listeners, that's at 6:30 this evening. You start by laying out what you say are four schools of thought that currently exist in U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah, that's right. There's really three primary. There's the neoconservatives. Of course, we know neoconservatives from the war on terror and fighting all these endless wars in the Middle East that President Trump rightly criticized. Then we have the liberal internationalists, who I also refer to as the globalists. They're essentially the Biden administration and the Democrats and almost liberal neocons. Some people call them neoliberals. I think that's a good term as well, but one that a lot of people aren't familiar with. And they're basically Atlanticists who believe that, our alliances keep us safe instead of actual hard power or military power. They're especially, dubious of, restoring our nuclear strength. We used to be the greatest nuclear superpower on Earth up until about 1972.
Sure.
And then since the Cold War ended, we've really disarmed a lot of, over 90% of our nuclear weapons, and that's left us extremely weak vis-a-vis Russia and China, who are, strong military allies, due to our foolish policies that have served to push them together. And of course, the war in Ukraine has also been a catalyst to make them closer allies as well.
This is fascinating because a lot of times, we experience foreign policy in headlines on cable news, right? and what you're saying is, with neoconservatives, with liberal internationalists, globalists, as you call them, realists, and neoconservative Republican and liberal internationalists, it seems you're saying basically we've agreed as a country at a certain point that we're just going to meddle all over the world, for better or worse, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think Senator Josh Hawley said it best in a landmark address he did at the Heritage Foundation earlier this year, when he referred to the U.S. Expansion of its liberal empire across the world as causing the war in Ukraine. I think that's completely accurate. Essentially, our alliance system is, where we provide the nuclear umbrella to our East Asian allies and also, of course, NATO. Essentially is kind of our empire. It's our sphere of influence. And the war in Ukraine, of course, was provoked rather, by the U.S. attempt to expand its liberal empire or sphere of influence into Ukraine, which was one of the most integral component parts of the former Soviet Union. The Russia has continually stated since 2007 as its nuclear red line. So, as the former director of the EMP Task Force stated, the late Dr. Peter Pyne, before he died, were essentially playing with nuclear fire. And I don't think most Americans are aware of how perilously close we are coming to some kind of nuclear or EMP Armageddon.
And that, I mean, it's an understatement to say that's a scary prospect. Bringing this all back into, David, you rely a lot on history, of course, in your presentation. You also cite a lot of LDS scripture under a section in which you say, we have a more, I'm paraphrasing here, but sort of a moral duty to renounce war as a last resort and put peace more prominently as a foreign policy objective. And one of the examples you cite, this is interesting because as a obsessive fan of history myself, at least the last few years, it's interesting to think about something like World War I and World War II as these two independent events. But we know from history that there's at least a lot of evidence that the rise of Hitler to power and the end result, of course, World War II, actually began in the resolution of World War I with the Versailles Treaty, which Hitler used as the reason people should give him power, right? And you argue that World War I, for example, could have ended without our involvement.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, World War I, the Versailles Treaty specifically, which was a very unjust and punitive treaty on defeated Germany, was really what gave birth to Hitler and the Nazi Party, and of course the Holocaust and all the excesses of World War II. And the reason is, it was really the reparations part of the treaty that enabled Hitler to become popular. Were it not for if those harsh reparations against Germany had ended by 1929, Hitler would have been an asterisk of history. He never would have been able to come to power. The Nazis never would have picked up more than 10%, probably a lot less than that of the seats in the Reichstag. And history would have been developed a lot more favorably. I don't think communist China would exist. North Korea wouldn't exist. The Soviet Union would have been hemmed in by, a resurgent but not militaristic Germany, as well as Imperial Japan, and we'd be a lot stronger and safer. The Soviet Union likely would have collapsed kind of along the same schedule, but communist China poses such a horrific threat. I think it's useful for us to understand how communist China came to exist and what we could have done to prevent it, so we don't create more enemies in the future.
Sure. This is, it's something we're seeing play out on the national stage in headlines today with the events in Ukraine. It's something you can find throughout history, and regardless of where you as a listener end up falling, the one thing we should all be able to agree on is we can look back and say, we didn't do everything perfectly, and we've learned a lot in hindsight that could have prevented, atrocities of all kinds. David, I should point out for listeners as well, David is also the author of a book. You can find this anywhere, literally online, Amazon and other places. The book's called Catastrophe Now, What U.S. Leaders Must Do to Ensure America's Survival, by David Pyne, our guest, who, again, will be speaking this evening at the Cache County Courthouse, the historic courthouse, at 6:30 p.m., a free event that has been organized by two groups here in Cache Valley that bring, speakers to town for various reasons, and that is the Cache County Conservatives Group and the Utah Citizens for the Constitution Group. Again, that event is 6:30 p.m. this evening at the Cache County Council Chambers. You can hear from David Pyne, also enjoy a Q&A afterwards. You can also read David's work ongoing at dpyne, that's spelled P-Y-N-E, dpyne.substack.com. Subscribe to his Substack newsletter there for more. And David, this really is fascinating. It's complex, and I think that's why most of us, myself included, have a hard time grasping it. But again, when we experience our foreign policy through immediate headlines, every event seems like an isolated incident. And this is what I find most fascinating about what you're arguing here, is that none of these are isolated incidents. There is always some sort of effect of an act in the present day that in the future. How does that, when you look back on Afghanistan and that 20-year war and our invasion of Iraq, I remember that debate as a lot of people saying, look, the ramifications of this could be so negative if we don't get it right. What do you think when you look back and having watched all of that recently play out?
Well, I was actually working as a U.S. Army headquarters staff officer on 9/11. My office was located two miles from the Pentagon, within sight of the Pentagon. So, that attack really drove home for me because, my family was potentially at risk, with any follow-on attacks. That was kind of a surreal moment, but it was really, kind of an inflection point, an opportunity for us to, pursue a wise policy and perhaps send, 5,000 special forces airlifted to Afghanistan to help overthrow the Taliban, but without having a massive military presence that occupied the country and turned the country against us and served to recruit tens of thousands more terrorists. But that's exactly, of course, what we did, unfortunately, over that 20-year period or so.
Sure.
With our invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria as well, is that, a lot of people don't realize there were actually over 30,000 military suicides that are believed to have stemmed from the war on terror. So it's not just the death count for, our soldiers that actually died in the Middle East in our forever wars, which was perhaps about 4,600, and almost as many contractors, but it's also the other 30,000 that died by suicide and tens of thousands more that are seriously wounded. We see heartbreaking videos of them on Fox News, and we support our wounded warriors. But it was really a lost opportunity. It helped turn Russia against us. President Putin was not always anti-Western. He actually pursued a very pro-Western policy up until about 2007 in an effort for Russia to join NATO and also for Russia's economy to be integrated with the EU, some kind of supranational economic agreement. And, of course, that would have changed history substantially. There wouldn't have been any Russian invasion of Georgia or Ukraine. We would be at peace with them. They would be a strategic partner, perhaps even against communist China. And, as a result, the security of our citizens would be greatly enhanced. But you're absolutely right. Everything, every mistake that we make, a major mistake on a foreign policy basis from, 100 years ago to the present has kind of had a ripple effect and has caused unforeseen consequences, which have put our country in the perilous situation that we face right now, where the U.S. has never been more at risk of being destroyed by a lot of different means, not just nuclear weapons.
This is, again, a broad conversation that takes on almost philosophical tones, but it's an important one to have. And, David, though, I do have to say this, you don't shy away from the technical side of things. And again, for listeners, this will be a part of the presentation. You can see details linked on our Facebook page. But you do get technical on some of this stuff. In fact, one that stands out to me that I wanted to ask about, because this is very technical, and I'd love to hear you expand on it. But one of the recommendations you make is changing something known as PDD-60, the Presidential Decision Directive. And you say currently U.S. policy is launch on impact. If another country fires a nuclear warhead and it touches down, it hits and actually is detonated here on U.S. soil, we then launch our own offensive back. You say something as simple as letting the world know that we've changed the policy to launch on warning of another country firing a nuclear warhead at us. You said that alone could be one of the most effective deterrents.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We have that policy. We also have an official policy that the U.S. will not defend the homeland against Russian and Chinese nuclear missiles. So it's really astounding. Essentially, we're at the same time we're provoking an existential attack, perhaps nuclear, upon the U.S. homeland. We're also, basically saying, hey, we won't do anything until you blow up D.C., essentially, because D.C. would be the first nuclear target in any nuclear attack scenario. So, with regards to PDD-60, that was a big issue when I was in my 20s, back in 1997 when it came out. President Clinton, wanted to kind of diffuse the Cold War. The Cold War was over, and he thought, we could start denuclearizing and, scrapping our Cold War winning nuclear arsenal. But that's basically what it is. It's I call it nuclear or launch on impact, rather, because until we've used national technical means like satellites and ground-based radars to detect at least one nuclear detonation on the U.S., we're not, the official policy is not to fire a single missile in response. And the impact of that, of course, would be there's a possibility that if D.C. is destroyed and the president dies and much of the Nuclear Command Authority is killed as well, we might not be able to retaliate at all. So you're absolutely right. If we were to scrap that and return to our Cold War nuclear posture of launch on warning, that would make for a much stronger, incredible U.S. nuclear deterrent.
This is fascinating stuff. And for listeners, a few places you can learn more. EMPtaskforce.us. You can subscribe to David's newsletter, which is a Substack newsletter, dpyne, Pyne, dpyne.substack.com. I've linked to both on our Facebook page. The newsletter called The Real War, and it's a subscription that you can actually throw your email address in there and make sure you never miss an episode or an excerpt. Also, again, grab his book, available most everywhere from what I've seen, just doing a little searching today. A few links for that on our Facebook page as well, but just do a quick Google search. You'll find a place to get it. Co-author of Catastrophe Now, What U.S. Leaders Must Do to Ensure America's Survival. He's also a contributor to the National Interest. Their website you may know already, but it's nationalinterest.org. And again, he will be speaking this evening at the historic Cache County Courthouse at 6:30, an event sponsored by Utah Citizens for the Constitution and Cache County Conservatives. David Pyne will be speaking tonight in a presentation called What is National Security? A fascinating opportunity for our listeners. And David, really appreciate taking some time for KVNU today ahead of the event, and hope to speak again soon.
I really appreciate it as well, and hope to see you there tonight if you're available.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, make time for it. This is a rare event to get out and talk about a topic usually so difficult to dig into at a free event. Again, this evening, 6:30 p.m. at the historic Cache County Courthouse. David Pyne speaking about national security in a presentation called What is National Security? And stay tuned. More of KVNU's For the People coming up right after this. Look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:30. News brought to you by You&I Furniture. Utah Republican Senator Mitt Romney said Wednesday he will not run for re-election, ending a storied two-decade political career that included the 2012 Republican GOP nomination for president and a term as Massachusetts governor.
I've spent my last 25 years in public service of one kind or another. At the end of another term, I'd be in my mid-80s. Frankly, it's time for a new generation of leaders.
The 76-year-old Romney said the country's many challenges call for a younger generation of leaders. He said the U.S. would be better served if the two frontrunners for their party's 2024 presidential nominations, namely Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican former President Donald Trump, stepped aside. Biden is 80 and Trump is 77.
We face critical challenges: mounting national debt, climate change, and the ambitious authoritarians of Russia and China. Neither President Biden nor former President Trump are leading their party to confront those issues.
He said after he leaves the Senate, he plans to focus on getting more young people voting and involved in the political process. As the GOP's 2012 nominee for the White House, Romney campaigned across America as a buttoned-up former Massachusetts governor and private equity executive. But with Trump's populist rise as the party's dominant figure, Romney's brand of republicanism shifted from establishment to outlier. He was the only GOP member of Congress to vote to convict Trump at both of his impeachment trials. Romney said at the news conference that he belongs to the, quote, wise wing of the Republican Party and doesn't think it will fade away. Students at Mount Logan Middle School were briefly held inside their classrooms after a student suffered a medical incident. The hold situation was initiated Wednesday afternoon during a part of the school's 6th and 7th hours. Principal Spencer Holmgren said students, faculty, and staff were kept inside classrooms to maintain the hallways clear in order for emergency responders to pass through without disruption. Logan City Police Lieutenant Brad Franke said a student had slipped and injured his back in the cafeteria as the school's resource officer and other staff attempted to provide assistance. The young boy began suffering from a panic attack. Paramedics were called to the school to provide care for the student. He was later reunited with his family. Franke said none of the students or school staff were ever in any danger. The hold protocol was incited to give the injured student privacy. Holmgren says he's pleased with the response of the students, faculty, and staff, as well as with Logan City Emergency Response Services. And a serial rapist from California was arrested in Utah. Now officials are encouraging other victims to come forward. Officials report that 25-year-old Ivan Romo was arrested in Salt Lake County on Wednesday. A photo provided by police shows Romo in a blue hoodie with black hair, a mustache, and a goatee. Police said Romo is a serial rape suspect and was wanted out of Modesto, California, for aggravated rape charges. Officials state there are multiple California victims in the case, all of whom worked as prostitutes. Although there are no active rape cases in Utah, police said they believe there may be local victims who did not report being assaulted because they are involved in prostitution. KBNU News Time is 5:35.
UNI Furniture has always been here to give you great value for your money. When it comes to home furnishings, it really is always a better buy at UNI. And right now, UNI is closing out last year's model mattresses. Closeouts on new models and displays, too. Memory foam, innerspring, and hybrids from a number of different name brand manufacturers. And ask UNI to show you this popular copper-infused mattress that sleeps cooler. And did you know UNI has a good selection of sheets and mattress protectors, too? UNI Furniture, over 90 years in downtown Logan. There's always a better buy at UNI.
Pay people more. That's the overwhelming message from attendees at the Detroit Auto Show. As the United Auto Workers strike deadline is late tonight, Preston Tyler lives in Detroit.
They should be paid more. The corporation is making billions of dollars. And these people have been with them and the cost of living and stuff like that. They've been with this company 20, 30 years.
Hunter Biden's lawyer says they'll fight his indictment on federal gun charges that are unusual, he and our legal analysts say, because the gun involved was not used to commit any crime and was bought when Hunter Biden finished drug rehab. President Biden is talking up Bidenomics and attacking what he calls the Republicans' MAGAnomics at Prince George's Community College, Maryland.
Their plan, MAGAnomics, is more extreme than anything America's ever seen before.
NASA's report on UFOs found no evidence of aliens, a year-long independent study, but, says NASA Administrator Bill Nelson about it.
The top takeaway from the study is that there is a lot more to learn.
Chuck Severson, ABC News.
KBNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies is our forecast for this evening. In the overnight low in the mid-40s, mostly sunny, around 80 degrees on Friday, sunny and lower 80s on Saturday. It's been to 77, it's 75 right now at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been in an accident that wasn't your fault and you're worried about how to pay the bills and take care of your family, you deserve an advocate. Now with offices in Logan, Chat anytime. It won't cost a dime. Not everyone has been in an accident, but everyone deserves an advocate. Chat online at utawadvocates.com or call 801-355-5550. And you can always get more news at cachevalleydaily.com.
Ready to experience a new level of local transit? Well, with the new CDTD app, it's super simple for you to plan your trip to a T. With our interactive map, you can view bus stops closest to your location with real-time arrival information. You can mark your favorite stops, get alerts, set reminders, and much more. So, whether you're a seasoned pro or it's your first ride, get moving today with the new CDTD app.
The Aggies are heading to Air Force to face the Falcons Friday night.
The talent level we're going to play over the next 3 weeks is going to be brutal. I mean, it does not get any easier.
KVNU is your home for the best game coverage with pregame at 4, kickoff at 6, and postgame and Aggie call immediately after the game. It's the Aggies and the Falcons Friday night on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at kvnutalk.com and the KVNU mobile app, the heritage home for the Aggies.
If a natural disaster comes knocking, how prepared is your family? You can't just close the door on earthquakes, floods, or hurricanes and hope they go away. That's why it's important to make a plan now. Ready.gov/plan has the tools and tips you need to prepare your family for an emergency. So if disaster shows up at your doorstep, you'll be ready. Visit ready.gov/plan and make a plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
There are those who dedicate themselves to a sense of honor, to a life of courage, and a commitment to something greater than themselves. They have always defended this nation and each other. They still do. The few, the proud, the Marines. Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps demonstrate their commitment to defend the American way of life. Since 1775, wherever the mission takes us, we always remember the land we call home. As Marines, we take a stand for our nation, for us all. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Staying on course without support is tough. With help from family and community, you get valuable support for recovery from a mental or substance use disorder. Join the Voices for Recovery. Visible, vocal, valuable.
For confidential information on mental and substance use disorders, call 1-800-662-HELP. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Leaders here in Utah recently attended what is called the Conservative Climate Summit. This is put together by, several people involved with this, but Representative John Curtis in Utah is one of the founders of the Conservative Climate Caucus, which is a legislative caucus in the United States Congress. But this summit is something that kind of spun from that. Utah organizations get behind this and host what they call a leadership conference or a summit in order to take the work of this caucus, take the work of others out there. We've spoken before with a conservative group coming out of northern Utah, in fact, that is pushing certain climate change addressing proposals, from tax incentives to reduce your emissions as a company or a producer to penalties, actually, that are similar to a carbon tax but more nuanced. There are a lot of different ways you can get in touch with this kind of thing, the conservative approach. I've linked to some of the caucus's documentation, but also links to video of the summit itself that happened in Salt Lake. on our Facebook page if you want to check it out. Most of it is long form, a couple hours long in total. But it was done through, breakout sessions and panels, and a lot of that video is easy to find if you want to just search for it as well. But a few links on our Facebook page. It's been interesting to watch because there's been this evolution. Congressman Rob Bishop, when he was in office, he was the first Republican in Utah to very bluntly say, he was asked a question, which was basically, do you believe in anthropomorphic climate change? Which is, do you believe humans are contributing and exacerbating the changing of our climate through greenhouse gas emissions that are warming the planet and the oceans? That was the specific question. And Congressman Bishop said, yes, absolutely. In fact, the science is pretty clear. And it was national news for weeks. Now, okay, I'm exaggerating, but it was at least a day. It was national news that a Republican had said this. And then Republicans started coming out of the woodwork and saying, well, I mean, yeah, it had become such a political football that Republicans were afraid to say this because people, in their base would pile on because it was such a political football. But times have changed. And one of the things that has changed this for conservatives and as my friend Paul Miro, a devout, lifelong conservative would argue, conservatives have always believed in climate change, and they've always believed that humans are contributing to it with some of our output and pollution. What the conservatives have disagreed with, Paul would say, is the proposed solutions and how drastically we need to act. That's where the difference came in. So conservatives were always there, Paul would argue. The Republican Party and elected officials within the party, a different story. It became such a political football, they couldn't talk about it. And Representative John Curtis said, this is an actual quote, he said, you know what, this is ridiculous. We all see the science. We all have the same access as every elected official up here to the information that comes our way through Congress's own research arms and reports from the military. That's what really kind of hammered this home. Is you had the Pentagon reports from the military saying, look, climate change is going to destabilize certain regions of the world as deserts expand, as wet areas move around, as weather gets more erratic, which is all what scientists have predicted climate change will bring, and we're seeing that now. And so they said this is a national security issue, and that got Republicans' attention. And so finally they started talking about it. And John Curtis said, we need to talk about it more because an exact quote from Representative Curtis, he said, Democrats are owning this one. And what that is causing is all the ideas are coming from them. And conservatives shouldn't let that continue. Now, behind the scenes, not for Representative Curtis, but for the larger Republican Party, there's another issue here. If you look at polling, voters under the age of 30, roughly, put climate change as either their top or second in line concern. And additional polling shows that there's a lack of faith among younger voters that Republicans have solutions. So Representative Curtis isn't thinking about that, but the overall national Republican Party and state parties increasingly are thinking that. Young voters want solutions. They want proposals to deal with climate change because they're worried about the planet. In fact, there is also evidence showing that declines in birth rates in the United States may be a direct result of concerns over climate change. People choosing not to have kids because they don't want to contribute to the climate problem, but also, and more alarming, they're not having kids because they're not confident there will be a decent planet for their kids to have their own kids in. And that's depressing to think about, that we have an entire generation that has that mindset, or a lot of them at least have that mindset. Representative Curtis said, his response to this is we need to show them that conservatives and Republicans have solutions. But he said at this climate summit recently, we also need to do more to direct the conversation, because he said there are a lot of things that he, as a conservative Republican, feel Democrats are missing or leaving out from the conversation around climate change. And here's just a bit of his presentation. He did this at the Sutherland Institute. They asked him, so he made a few comments like this during a panel during the Conservative Climate Summit here in Salt Lake last week. And Sutherland Institute invited him back this week to expand on what he said. And here's what he said at the Sutherland Institute event just earlier today.
This is an astounding fact. The United States has reduced more greenhouse gas emissions over the last decade and a half than most of the countries trying to reduce emissions combined. We did that, hold your breath, with a fossil fuel. Natural gas is much cleaner than many other sources. And so instead of saying, look, fossil fuels are bad, I think it's a much better conversation to say, how do we reduce emissions? And if that's using, you mentioned the balance, okay, if that's renewables, if that's nuclear, if that's fossil fuels, how are we best able to reduce emissions and hang on to those things like national security, energy independence at low affordable price? This is an astounding fact. The United States has reduced... That
was, again, John Curtis speaking at the Sutherland Institute event today. Sutherland Institute has been hosting a weekly series, which they're also putting out as a podcast called Defending Ideas, Common Sense Conservatism. And so it's interesting for me to watch this, too, because even Sutherland has shifted on this one. 10 years ago, the Sutherland Institute, and this is how Paul Miro and I actually became friends, believe it or not. Sutherland Institute was hosting a climate series, a series of panels and speakers. And I was so excited about this because of what John Curtis is talking about today. Okay, here is, the right side of the conversation. The left side of the conversation around climate change has been around for decades, and definitely Democrats, embracing the left on climate change have owned that discussion, and all you've heard from Republicans and conservatives is we don't believe in it, which increasingly just means we're pretending it doesn't exist, because again the science is right there in your face. So I was so excited when the Sutherland Institute hosted this because I'm a firm believer in the fact that to get the best policy you need a war of ideas. You need left and right, knocking heads occasionally, but hopefully for the most part compromising, coming up with ways to include important priorities for both sides, and then you end up with some decent policy. So I was so excited, and then they brought in all of these representatives from big oil conglomerates. And it was interesting. There was quite a bit to learn still. But I told Paul and the rest of the leadership of Sutherland, I said, big mistake. Because now it just looks like an advertisement. You could have done this credibly. And I was so disappointed. And nothing like that has happened in Utah since. Until Representative John Curtis launches this Conservative Climate Caucus in Congress, and that leads to this Conservative Climate Summit. Second annual, by the way, that took place. It was, I'm sorry, I said Salt Lake. It was actually in Orem at Utah Valley University. And outgoing, now retired at this point, I believe, Congressman Chris Stewart was there as well. And GOP nominee for his seat, the seat he's vacated, Celeste Malloy was there as well. But there were a lot of experts on hand. And here's what was great. They had scientists. They had researchers from UVU and other universities as well. This wasn't just like an this wasn't just oil industry reps standing up there saying, you could drink this stuff in your morning cereal, which is kind of what was happening 10 years ago on the right. So this is so encouraging to see. And you heard from Representative Curtis there, to kind of translate what he said there, what he's saying is, look, this idea that we can do this without fossil fuels entirely is silly. And I actually agree. And there are some on the extreme left out there who are even opposed to nuclear because, granted, nuclear energy does present some significant risks, and you do need a lot of water to make it work with current technology. New technologies are coming online, every year, but right now, if you're just going to wave a magic wand and set up a nuclear power plant here in Utah, you would need to use a lot of the water, and as you may have heard, it's kind of a precious resource in a desert state. So, we have to be realistic about this. There are no magic wands, but Curtis is right. Fossil fuels, if we were to just switch off the fossil fuel spigot tomorrow, and I completely agree, we should have done something 10, 15, 20 years ago. We should have done more But we didn't. So here we are now today. You can't just switch them off. That would the effects of that economically on everyone's quality of life, just unimaginable. So you can't just switch them off, but you can push for the adoption of more natural gas use, which is cleaner than burning oil or coal. You can. Curtis also pointed this out. He said, for my side of things, the Republican side of things, we need to stop being. This is an exact quote. Curtis said, "We need to stop being silly about wind and solar. It's working. Other countries have built a huge portion of their power grid off of wind and solar, and yet a lot of my colleagues will still tell me solar doesn't work when the sun isn't up." And Curtis said, I just want everyone to be better informed on my side of things because we're wasting our time making these arguments because we have ideas. It was a fascinating thing to see. Again, I've linked to the video on our Facebook page if you want to check it out. Please do. This was the second annual. We'll be back again next year, roughly the same time. And there's actually a subscription for an email newsletter to stay up to date on these events. It was hosted at UVU this time. I believe next year they're planning on going a little further south, a location in the Moab area. But again, this is a one-of-a-kind thing happening, and hats off to one of Utah's federal delegates, Congressman Chris Stewart from Utah's 3rd Congressional District, for launching this Conservative Climate Caucus and the annual Conservative Climate Summit. An amazing conversation, and believe me, it might take a bit more, but it will make everything better when it comes to the policy coming out of these debates. To have both sides presenting ideas and countering proposals instead of just one with the other one getting ignored. So all good news, and check it out. Again, links on our Facebook page, and we'll be back right after this.
Attention lovers of the Latin culture. Saturday, September 16th, Center Street in Logan will be the epicenter celebration for the Latino Festival. A day filled with joy, music, and cultural dances. A parade that marches down Center Street and fun music. Come hungry, as we have an impressive selection of Latin flavors. And don't forget to visit our vendor booths, where you can take home a piece of Latin culture. This year's Latino Festival is made possible by WCF Insurance, offering insurance solutions for businesses of all sizes and committed to strengthening the communities we serve. Members First Credit Union, our name says it all. And at Members First Credit Union, community matters. Gosner Foods, enjoy starting wages between $16 and $19 per hour. Quarterly bonuses and free health insurance. Inquire at GosnerCareers.com. This year's Latino Festival is Saturday, September 16th on Center Street in Logan. The celebration gets underway at 4.
Monster Trucks Nitro Tour will invade the Cache County Fairgrounds with 2 big shows, 1:30 and 7:30 p.m. this Saturday. Monster Trucks Freestyle Motocross and Jet Ambulance Meltdown. Plus all new Inflection Buster prices. VIP tickets includes the pit party pass and the best seat. Get tickets at MonsterTruckTour.com or get them at the gate. Subject to service fees. For more info, go to MonsterTruckTour.com. Ride in a real monster truck. Kids get a free tour gift at the Saturday matinee show while supplies last. This Saturday, the Cache County Fairgrounds.
Are you concerned about the state of our national security, open borders, the looming China threat, the strain on our munition supply due to the war in Ukraine? Does low military recruitment mean a mandatory draft is imminent? These issues affect all of us, but particularly if you have children. Come listen to a true expert, David Pyne, shed light on these topics. David serves as a deputy director of the EMP Task Force, a congressional advisory board, this Thursday the 14th at 6:30 p.m. at the Old Courthouse in Logan at 200 North Main. This event is free and open to everyone.
Are you caring for an aging loved one and feeling overwhelmed? I invite you to consider how the supportive community at Legacy House of Logan can help. Their caretakers are so good at helping your loved one with the little things, like dressing, bathing, and managing medications. But Legacy House of Logan is more than just practical support. It's a social community where your loved one can make new friends. Come meet some of the people and tour the facility on 1400 North in Logan and online at legacylogan.com.
This is the sound of one person walking. This is another. Imagine the sound of more than 5 million footsteps, one for every American living with Alzheimer's disease. Add in the millions who feel its effects, and think about the impact we can make when we all walk together to put an end to Alzheimer's for good. Join the Alzheimer's Association Walk to End Alzheimer's today. Register now at alz.org/walk.
Don't miss the Walk to End Alzheimer's Saturday, September 16th at Merlin Olsen Park. Registration starts at 10 a.m.
Can you imagine what it would be like if you only had one option to choose from when buying a new car? Or while at a restaurant, they only offered one entree? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Hi, this is Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance. If your current insurance agent only offers one option, then it may be time to change. At Quality First Insurance, we have access to hundreds of insurance carriers. Auto Owners Insurance and Quality First will give you options. Quality First Insurance, 2129 North Main Street, in front of Fisher Home Furnishings.
That's our show for today. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Normally, I would say be with us tomorrow, but no show tomorrow. And we're happy about the reasons why, because as you may have heard, Utah State Aggies returned to KVNU's airwaves. It was a long few years, and we got a lot of people complaining. It wasn't our fault, but it's back. Happy that that's the case, and I assume everyone in the Valley is as well. That is the reason we won't be on tomorrow. Aggie pregame with Al Lewis and crew and more, roughly the same time we would normally be on. So no For the People tomorrow, but that means, again, no movie show tomorrow, unfortunately. It is a good week to miss, though. Only one new film in theaters here in Logan this weekend, A Haunting in Venice. This is based on an Agatha Christie story, similar to Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express. Kenneth Branagh reprising his role as Hercule. And, well, I mean, if you saw those others, if you're familiar with Agatha Christie, you know exactly what to expect from this one. That is the only new film here in Logan, but you can still see Barbie, Gran Turismo, The Hill, Blue Beetle, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, The Nun 2, and Equalizer 3. And I swear, next weekend, there will be more. In fact, next Friday on the movie show, we've got a lot to talk about. After Everything, Camp Hideout, and a comedy horror movie that you're probably going to be excited about. And yes, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, also hitting theaters as well. We'll talk about it all. The Exorcist Believer coming soon. Plenty to get to. That's the For the People movie show next Friday. This is our last show of the week, so thanks to everyone for tuning in. Be sure to be with us on Monday. Governor Gary Herbert, former governor of Utah, will be joining us to talk about the launch of his new institute at Utah Valley University and how he hopes to bring dignity and civility back to Utah politics. That's coming up Monday on For the People. Dave Ramsey is next here on KVNU Logan.
KVNU Logan.